Morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where people are, but we're really glad to have you here today. And we're honored to be here. So we're excited to be representing HP and to discuss the power of executive sponsors in driving ERG success. At HP, we've built a strong program, and we're excited to share the things that we've learned with you and then also hear from you as well. So we're excited that we get to talk about executive sponsors, how they can help strengthen your ERG to ensure that the work being done is aligned to business goals, driving impact, is visible across the company, and is valued to the degree that it should be, because we know everybody's working hard and want to make sure that we're using the executive sponsors to help support that. So as a side note, before we start, we changed the name of our employee resource groups a couple of years ago. They're called Business Impact Networks, or BINs. So you will hear us use ERG and BIN, or Employee Resource Group, and Business Impact Network interchangeably as we talk today. But before we jump into the content, there are two of us presenting today, and we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves. So Annette.
Hello, so welcome. Summit is one of the most exciting times of the year for me. I am a general manager and a global head of a specialty printing or industrial and life science division at HP. But I also am the global co-sponsor with a gentleman out in Australia as the global sponsors of Global Pride, and we have 18 ERGs around the world. A little bit about me. I've been out since 1990, since coming out of business school, and raising two sons with my same gender partner was really the impetus that kept me out over all those years, because raising little kids is kind of obvious, and in the workplace really has cemented a lot of relationships and commonality with other parents. So I have cats, dogs, two sons that are now adults and off on their own, and a new wife of 20 years. So that's me. I guess I should also mention, in 1995, I was the co-author of a book called Straight Jobs, Gay Lives, which was published by Simon & Schuster. So it was one of the first mainstream published books on what the experiences of people are in the workplace being gay and lesbian. Interesting that now the perspectives and discussions have evolved quite a bit, because it was just L and G then, and now 25 years later we're talking about much more inclusion in our workplace of bisexuals and transgender and queer and non-binary, and so I've loved to see how our work here in the workplace has evolved, and I'm proud to be part of HP. So Beth.
Thank you. So my name's Beth Miller, and I work in our Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion organization. I'm a program manager in the organization, so I program manage all of our business impact networks globally. We have 125 of them in about 32 countries across 6 different constituencies, and I'll talk about that a little later. But I am in Corvallis, Oregon, and you can see some photos there. I have the best job ever. No matter what job, I've been at HP 24 years, and no matter what job I had, all in HR, DEI was always important to me. So no matter if I was a talent manager or I was a business HR partner, I would be the one questioning, the lists of people who were going to submit for talent programs or whatever to make sure that we had diversity on there. So I got to move into this role about 6 years ago. Love every minute of it. Love working with our Business Impact Network leaders and with our executive sponsors. And you can see, have family there. We have 5 kids. And like to travel. You can see some pictures from some of the Pride events we've had out in Equal, and a Pride March in Portland. Can't wait till we get to do that kind of stuff in person again. So that is me. And we're going to do a quick poll just so we can get to know a little bit about you before we get started. So on the side of the video, there should be a tab that says polls. And the first one says enter questions for the speakers. So you can just ignore that one right now. But there's a poll that asks, tell us about your role. So why don't you start with that one and you can click as many of those things as apply to you, just so we can get a sense of who's here with us today. And Annette's gonna watch what's going on and share what we see.
And if you don't remember how to navigate back to Pathable, I put in the chat the link. That should take you back to where this session is featured, and then on the right you would hit polls.
Awesome. getting some responses, people finding it. And as a side note, while people are responding to the first poll, Annette and I have done this session before at Out and Equal. So I don't know if anybody is a returning person who's been here before, but if this is your first time or if you're returning, there's value in the conversation and the panel we're going to have for everybody. So happy to have you back if you've been here before, and happy to have you here if it's your first time.
I love the participation. Awesome. So we've got over 200 people on the call, and we have about, still answers are rolling in, but the clear dominant majority of the attendees is 68% are an LGBTQ plus ERG leader. And then we have, looks like between about, let's see, 2% are actually executive sponsors of either an LGBTQ ERG or an other type of ERG, which is great because I think all the lessons learned and the things that we'll be talking about today are applicable to all flavors of ERGs. So good. And then we have a sizable population of 12% who are members of ERGs. Maybe you're aspiring to step more into leadership, and hopefully we inspire you to do that. And then we have 12% who are program leaders from HR or DE&I. And I just want to say thank you, a shout out to the hardworking HR representatives and DEI representatives in your organizations, because you create so much of the pathway for the volunteers in ERGs to fall under the umbrella that you're creating. And Beth is that for us at HP. It's kudos to her that when we spun off from Hewlett Packard Enterprise, we had less than 30 ERGs, if I remember, and we have over 130 now. So that's the power that one person who can be just an amazing ally across the world, and impact that Beth and HR and DEI folks can have. So awesome.
Awesome. And there's a second poll out there, and I don't know if people
just scroll down a little bit. Same page. Yep.
It's asking you, if you're involved in an ERG, how does your executive sponsor identify? Or if you are the executive sponsor, how do you identify outside of the ERG community represented, i.e. you're an ally, you're a member of the community representative, or you don't have an executive sponsor, or you're not sure.
Okay, I'll just give it a little time for the little wheel to spin as more answers come in. I'm so impressed that everybody found their way over to the link and actually can participate in this poll. Awesome. You get gold stars for technology. Okay, I think we're bouncing around 60% are outside the ERG community represented. 28% are a member of the community represented, and 7% don't have an executive sponsor right now. And so I think we'll cover that, as well as the profile and engagement to try to attract an executive sponsor for your ERG.
Awesome. And thank you, everybody, for sharing. It's great to know a little bit more about you.
Yeah.
So I'll shift to the agenda slide, Annette.
Okay, so what we're going to do, here's how it's going to work. Usually we have done this in person in executive forum and at Summit in the past, and we break it out over a 3-hour workshop. We've done it in 90 minutes as well for other audiences. And so this is going to be a condensed, abridged version in 60 minutes. It's going to fly by pretty quickly. We will be sharing the slides. So some of the slides, we won't go so deep into the content, but we want to quickly get to the panel discussion and then closing in Q&A opportunity for some of you to participate as well. We see a lot of activity in the chat. We'll try to answer some live in situ here, but certainly if there's some questions that we don't get to, we'll try to make an effort to answer them in the Pathable platform. And I think I can speak for Beth as well. If you want to message us in the Pathable platform, we'll be happy to engage and help you as well. So Absolutely. Our mission here is to help you utilize and benefit from an executive sponsor. So here we go. So just I'll tee it up a little bit about HP. As I mentioned, I've been in the workforce for over 30 years now. And I've been with HP for 12 years. And when I joined for the technology. Most people know HP by our printers and our PCs, workstations, laptops, world class. We provide technology for everyone everywhere. But what I've been so impressed by is the actual genuine dedication to the HP waves, which is a really big part of community, planet, and people. And our CEO has set out our vision for 2030, where we aim to be the world's most sustainable and just technology company. And so there's these three pillars. We seriously take climate action, our products, highly sustainable, recyclable, ocean-bound plastics, for example, human rights. Our work here in D&I and LGBT equity is falling under the human rights pillar, and digital equity, bringing up access to the world's population to help transform lives and communities. So very bold. I don't want to give too much of a propaganda sales pitch for HP, but if you are interested, hp.com/jobs is where you can find out about opportunities or visit our virtual booth in the Pathwell platform as well. Great.
So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper, and I'll go through these really quickly, like Annette said, because we want to have enough time for the panel at the end for us to ask them some questions, and then you to ask them some questions if you'd like to. But just to give you a sense of what we're doing at HP, so you can understand when we're talking about the work we're doing, where that's coming from. Our DEI strategy, we call the BIG strategy for Belong, Innovate, and Grow. And we believe that when you have the ability to have, the greatest sense of belonging, when you can come to work, you can be who you are, not worry about checking parts of who you are at the door. Whoops, sorry. You're energized, you're engaged, you're innovating, and you'll show up passionately every single day. So with that, it's really important to us to have this belong, innovate, and grow, and create that culture. Our values drive who we are and what we do. We have a long history of supporting DEI. So HP has done this work for, I've been there 24 years, and it's been going on way before I got there. So it's a foundation of who we are as a company. And so when we drill down to our business impact network strategy, or our ERG strategy, we have three pillars: increase diversity, foster inclusion, and positively impact business results. So these are the things that we want our bins are working on. So ensuring that our employee demographics reflect our customer and regional demographics, celebrating a culture that values differences as a competitive advantage, and leveraging our diversity to win in the marketplace. So as our bins or ERGs are looking at the work they do, they're aligning to this and our big strategy. And this has allowed us to grow our bin program, like Annette was mentioning earlier. So you can see on here, we have 6 constituencies. They're in the upper left-hand corner there. So women, young employees, or early career, pride, veterans, U.S. military veterans, multicultural, which some of those are multicultural, some are Black, some are Asian, some are Hispanic, depending on the location. And then disabilities. And our ERGs have gone through an evolution over the years. So, from networking or advocacy groups to employee resource groups to business impact networks. And that's a whole conversation and discussion in itself. Actually, our CDO and I did a session on that at an ERG conference not long ago. And you can see over here, like Annette said, we started when we split almost 6 years ago with 36 bins in 8 countries, and now we're up to 125 in 32 countries. And also, like she mentioned, we have 18 Pride impact networks globally. So that's where we're coming from and what our structure looks like. And I will turn it back over to Annette.
Okay, so we said, why is this topic so important? What we found is, from the top down, we've had amazing CEOs say inclusion is a business imperative. We have amazing grassroots involvement by volunteers, like majority of you on this call, who are dedicated to equity for the LGBTQ+, and have many of you are allies who are passionate about improving this work environment and ability for each employee to show up and do their best and be engaged and thrive in their careers. What we found, and what many companies report, is the middle management needs to be more engaged. And I could make excuses for all of them. They're very busy. I'm one of them. It's a lot of time, right? And we're addressing COVID issues and supply chain issues, and yet finding that time. And so why is it so important? It's actually now a business imperative that leaders show up and become part of our big initiative of Belong, Innovate, and Grow as well. So what we've realized is that over the evolution of these ERGs as well, some can be really passionate, and if it's not tied to the business initiatives, then is all their passion benefiting the employees and the companies? We found a key success factor for our BINs, our ERGs, is that they have an executive sponsor. Similar to the benefit of having a manager to provide guidance, to provide strategic thinking, and to open doors and to sponsor those leaders who are involved. So leaders can do what leaders do. Executive sponsors can be those leaders. So it can really be a game changer for your ERGs. And so that's why we're having this topic. That's why it's important. And being able to, there's nuances on how to create that relationship with an executive sponsor, how to tap into the skill set and resources and access that an executive sponsor can have, and then how do you communicate that and learn from that throughout your ERG so that you're ongoing positively impacting the ERG, the membership, alignment to the business goals, so that you can get things done and really do things that matter. And not only doing things, but also raising the visibility so that the employees who are doing all this great work get credibility for it at the end of the year, even in their performance reviews, that they get credit for that. So bringing an executive sponsor has a role of bringing that visibility to all the hard work that's being done. So let's transition and dig a little bit deeper into some of the roles that executive sponsors play. Now, this is a bit of an eye chart, but we, again, are going to leave behind these slides so you have this as a resource. So first off, we leverage heavily the work of Jennifer Brown, and it's footnoted on the bottom of this slide. Jennifer has presented at Meetful conferences, and she has a great study out on the executive sponsors that fuel high-performing ERGs. Her framework identifies 5 key roles that executive sponsors can play. Some executive sponsors do a little bit of all. Some are keyed in on some of the key roles. Every executive sponsor, every employee, every individual, as we all know, brings different strengths to the role. So one role is the strategist, really setting the vision, working with the leadership team, saying, what do we want to accomplish this year? Are we going to be involved? How are we going to show up at Summit? How are we going to show up throughout Pride? How are we going to show up at National Coming Out Day? Or how are we engaging with allies? The very big strategy questions so that the group can be focused. An evangelist is another. Passion, energy, driven. An executive sponsor who's an evangelist may host coffee talks and talk to their teams or speak with other leaders who are sponsoring other ERGs. So evangelists can show up in many ways, but as an external spokesperson for your group. External meaning could be external to the community or external to other groups and other forums in your company. An innovator. I think we all probably work for fairly large companies and there's a fair amount of red tape, and how do you get things done? And so sometimes we've experienced where an ERG membership may not know how to get a purchase order, to get the pizza for the social, whatever the event is. So there's obviously ways that executives know how to navigate through some of those bureaucratic things that any group needs to know how to navigate, or even a phone call to get support from IT or support from communications team to be able to put out a newsletter. That type of assistance can be very helpful. So those are kind of tactical things, but I think there's an innovator can be looking for ways to help the group function. Are there agile ways to get more done, things like that. The broker role is how really can the leader connect you with other influential leaders across the organization. Perhaps when there's issues that come up, there's some challenges in the organization, how can they broker resolution or through tough learnings. So a broker and advocate can be a very helpful role that the executive sponsor can have. And the last one is pretty dear to my heart and dear to my passion, and why I'm an executive sponsor, is to coach, role model, and exude confidence in our leaders. We have some amazing leaders who, by org chart, are very low in the organization, but they're making a tremendous influence on our company. And so I want to sponsor those folks. I want to see them progress in their career. I want to see them get credit for the leadership experience that they're getting and demonstrating in the ERG leadership, which is their manager should know that. Their manager, I let their manager know, hey, they took on a leadership role in a Pride event, for example, or put on a speaking engagement, and they did a fantastic job. So mentoring and being a sounding board is a very key aspect of being an executive sponsor. So if you are an executive sponsor, I hope you look at these 5 and kind of be motivated to see how more you can help. If you're an ERG leader and you're looking for a new sponsor, how to invigorate your existing sponsor, share this framework and discuss, and we'll take it into some tactical suggestions on how to implement that as well. Okay. So that is the transition right there. Okay, still on me. I'll stop and Beth will get to go on the next slide. So, so selecting the right executive sponsor. Acknowledge executives in our companies are very busy, right? And so if you do have a way to find the intersection of their passions and the mission of your ERG, you're going to have a mutual objective that's going to be the base for you to be engaged and excited and want to learn from each other and want to help each other. So of those five roles, looking for, is this person able to think big, help us with strategy? Are they credible? Can they open doors maybe at your site councils? Are open access to funding? Although, I wouldn't ever suggest go with your hand out asking for money first. I mean, really find that common ground and what is that in their goals and aspirations of being leaders intersect with your ERG. Obviously, someone who's a passion to serve others. One of the challenges is the same executive sponsor can be asked to be the sponsor for fewer ERGs because they become popular. You become like, oh, that'd be a great person. Look how visible they are. Be careful about loading up an executive sponsor with too much or too many ERGs. Try to find someone who is maybe new to the game or not already oversubscribed would be one personal tip that I would give to you as well. If they're an executive in your company, a director, vice president, or higher, I'm assuming they got there because they're a people developer and they sponsor and mentor people. But ask them, is this important to you? Because that's one of the key aspects that you would like them to participate in your ERG leadership meetings. Maybe not every meeting, but is it quarterly? And speak with them about how could they show up and what is their interest. And then a team builder, often executive sponsors will see that there's turnover in the ERG. They'll see that there's a lack of succession plan, for example, or a lack of skill sets. And believe me, I would expect any of our executive sponsors in our group to help pull in additional resources, additional volunteers into the ERG and helping the ERG think through, oh, would it be beneficial to have a member from the marketing team? Great. Let's see if the executive sponsor can go speak to their manager and say, there's some openings here, and this would be a great development opportunity for more of your team to get involved. And we really need someone from marketing, for example, in our ERG. So this is some thought starters for you to be looking for the attributes, the availability, and the intersection of the interest to an executive sponsor.
Awesome. Thanks, Annette. And one more slide, and then we'll shift over to our panel. So I'm going to go through this relatively quickly, just so we can give them plenty of time to share all of their wonderful thoughts with you as well. But some other key considerations as you're thinking about executive sponsorship and working with your executive sponsor is to really understand their why. So I think a lot of times, a ERG leadership team will be assigned an executive and they don't really know what to do with them. the executive doesn't really know what to do either. And so it's really important to have the conversations, invite people in and just start talking to each other. And one of the things you want to find out is, why are they doing this? Is it for their personal satisfaction? Is it because they want some development around whatever the topics, the challenges that the group that they're supporting is having? Maybe they're a part of that group, and so they want to be part of the solution. They want more understanding, some reverse mentorship. Maybe they are trying to develop their DEI leadership competency. Maybe it's not an area they've worked in before, and being an executive sponsor is one way they can start and learn some other stuff. So really understanding their why, because once you understand why they're doing it, it's easier to have the conversations and access the things that they would be willing to do for you as an ERG leadership team. And the other thing I'll say is, it's not unusual for our ERGs to have more than one executive sponsor. Many of them have one, but many of them have more than one too. So when you look at those 5 roles, if one person is playing a couple of them and one person is playing a couple of the other roles, a lot of times that works out really well as well. And then contract annually. So it's really important to have those conversations with your executive sponsor and to contract with them. So as part of your annual planning process, just sit down with them and say, are you still the right person for the role? I mean, we do that for all of our roles, for our chair, our co-chair, our work stream leads, also our executive sponsor. Is it time to give somebody else the opportunity, or do you have too much on your plate this year? And still to make sure that that person is right for the role and wants to be a part of it. Talk about what worked and what didn't work last year. So where are the places where you really felt like you got support from them, and where are the places where you could have used some more support to better achieve the goals that you set out, and vice versa, right? What worked for them, and then what didn't work for them? What were your biggest challenges, top priorities? What do they need to be more impactful? So just having that contracting conversation and figuring out what's going to happen in the year going ahead. And then use sponsor insights to increase impact. When we've done this in a longer session, we've done surveys of our executive sponsors, and we've asked them questions, and then we take the important information that we get back from them, and you can discuss that with them. How do you where are the places they're adding value? Where are the places that they'd like to be adding value? But you can survey them and then use those insights to increase your impact. Establish yourselves as mentors. So a lot of times it's like, hey, the executive's the one, right? They're the highest level, they're the mentor, but you're there to mentor them too, because you probably have experiences that they don't have. Like in our survey, a lot of your executive sponsors are not a part of the group that you're supporting, that is the constituency. So you have a man for a Women's Impact Network, you have a straight ally for a Pride Impact Network. So you have the opportunity to mentor them as well. So it's a two-way learning process, not just one way. And then invite them to participate. And I think Annette mentioned this before. So make it really clear what it is you want from them. Ask them to come to your events. Ask them, we want you to be a part of panels. We want you in your organization to stand up and speak on behalf of the work we're doing. We want you to, be a champion for our Pride Impact Network and for DEI overall. Whatever it is, make sure that you're inviting them into it. Because a lot of times, like I said, they don't know what to do. So,
and on that note, I think sponsors need peers. And so when we were new in our journey, I called up Beth and I said, hey, do you mind if I pull all the executive sponsors together? And she's like, no, run with it. So I host a quarterly Pride executive sponsor call. And so the 18 executive sponsors have the opportunity to meet their peers. And I share our global initiatives, and then I do roundtable and I put them on the spot and I say, hey, what are you doing for your bin out there in Barcelona? Hey, what are you doing down in Brazil? What are you doing over in Boise? And that the feedback has been that people really enjoyed hearing from their peers how to be an executive sponsor. So I would highly encourage you guys to, if it doesn't exist like this, just lean in and invite people, because that camaraderie builds motivation and connection and provides role models for each other. And then it's fun too. It's like they get more out of it as well. So with that, we're going to shift to our panel. We have 3 of our executive sponsors here.
And so our panel today is Deb Seek, Erin Schlesinger, and Martine Steer. And I'm not going to introduce them. I'll let them introduce themselves in our questions. So I'm going to stop sharing. We don't need slides for this. And we'll go to the panel. And the first question I just want to ask all of you is, give a brief introduction of yourself. Let them know who you are, why this work is important to you, and the challenges and opportunities that the executive sponsor role has provided for you.
All right, well, I think I was first in the queue, so I'll go first in the answering. So first of all, thanks again for having me here. This is my second time being on the panel. So that is, the first time I was really nervous, but now I'm a little bit less, but still there. So I've been with HP for 20 years, and I've had the opportunity to work at 4 different sites. And the reason why I wanted to be a sponsor for Pride is a couple of reasons. One is I got to be involved in the community. It's a great way when you're moving to get to know a lot of people. And we have a very active site. Almost 80% of our site is involved in a bin or more than one bin. So it's a great way to get to know people. And I personally have a connection with Pride for many reasons, including I have family members I've been an ally for. And I've seen some places in other cities where there was challenges in the office, and I felt I can make a difference. So that is why I chose to be part of the Pride bin as a sponsor. I think from challenges, we're all challenged with how do you contribute? What's the best way to be part of the bin and contribute as a sponsor? As well as how does the bin contribute within the site? Because we do have a large active site. You got to make sure you have a good role to play and you have a lane that you're going to play in there. And from benefits, it's been a great way for me to do reverse mentoring with the team, to get involved in the organization at the site, and to also meet more of HP across the different locations and some of my peers. So it's been a great way to help develop my career. Pass it over.
I think I was next up. So I'm Aaron Schlesinger. I'm the executive sponsor for the Houston Pride Bin at HP. I have been at HP for 24 years. Part of those years were an intern, so I'll claim that. But it's been a great journey for me. Recently, it's been about a little over a year now. The team, including Beth, asked if I would come and consider being executive sponsor. And one is I was just completely honored that they would ask me, for one. And 2 is I immediately jumped at the opportunity, and I think the first question I asked was like, well, when do I start and when can I meet the team, right? The things that really excited me about doing it was just being more involved with my people, so to say, right, at the site. And then as I really got into it, it was more along the lines of what can we do to go build awareness at our site of what we're trying to go do. And then at the same time, how can we partner with the other bins to make sure that we're being just as big of an advocate and a supporter of what they're trying to go off and do as well. So it's been a great journey for the past year. And personally, from a benefit standpoint, just much like you, Deb, since this is my first year, I am a little nervous, by the way. But the benefit for me is the guys who sit on the bin are just great folks, and at the same time, it's been so good just to have them teach me what they're wanting to go do and their way of viewing things, so that I can just gradually broaden my view. So nice to meet all of you.
Great, thank you, Aaron, and I'm Martin Stier. I've been with HP as well for 12 years, been an HR professional for over 20. And my biggest passion is to see people and help people grow. And coming from a Jewish family and a Latino family in the US, definitely I've always felt that being part of a minority of some sort, and I feel the responsibility as an executive to help our communities where are not well represented and their voice is not always heard. So I've always felt the passion to help the Pride bin at HP. I've been doing that partnership for a couple of years now. This is my 4th Out on Equal Summit. I think it's my 3rd panel with Beth and Annette, second with Deb, and I'm hoping that we can have a great conversation on how, as an executive sponsor, I can help you and help those that are looking for executive sponsors to get inspired, how to engage with them. For me, has always been an opportunity to mentor, to learn from the bean, as well as to push other members of the leadership community to understand how important it is to help this community to be out, to be supportive, and to have a critical role in advancing our business. So back to you, Beth.
Awesome. So when you all look at that list of roles that executive sponsors play, do you look at that and go, I do every single one of these all the time? Or how does that apply to what you do in your role as executive sponsor? Let's start, Aaron.
I'll go first. I do not do all of those roles. The one is, I think I looked at the list and I think I try to be a mentor. I think I'm a decent broker and maybe a little bit of a strategist. But I think at the end of the day, like when I first started, I asked the guy, the team, like, what do you want to achieve at the end of the year? Let's build a plan that basically goes off and achieves what we want to do, right? Like how we get there, let's figure it out. But what are our goals, and then how do they ladder up to like the global Pride bin and that type. And then along the way, I think we've come up with some pretty unique things where we just want to drive awareness and that type of thing. And maybe it's a little better than tin cupping, but I have gone and asked for some funds to try to get support and that type of thing. And I think one of the things that also has helped me do from a personal standpoint on the broker side is, I've kind of done uncomfortable things and just reached out to folks that I had not talked to before. But I think the great thing about being part of this organization is I had a reason to reach out to them. And that benefits not only the bin, but myself. So.
How about you, Martine?
Definitely, I think that similar to Aaron, there's a lot of brokerage. There's a lot of mentoring. There's a lot of evangelism as well, and advocacy, and being in the room with other leaders. At least for me, I hear a lot when I connect in roundtables, and when we used to visit our different sites. We would have roundtables and we would connect with different members of the BIN, and they would expect more from our leaders. And I always felt that it was my responsibility to bring that message to the leaders, be that broker, but more than a broker. Broker, I think more as, okay, we need this to make this event happen. We need more participation. I think the evangelism and the help deliver the right message and get to the right audience so that the support is there and the understanding is there as well. So a little bit of that too.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard to be a lot of everything, and you just want to be depth. I do find it differs based on what the chair needs, right? So a lot of as our chairs change, then they need different things. We have had some chairs that this was their first time in leadership, and so they were looking for advice. And then we have some chairs who are very strong, who've done other bins, and they're very strong, so they need different things. So it depends on the chair as to where I feel like we spend the time. But the one thing that I think of it as a couple of things that we really have to do, which is you need to stand up for the bins. I still see a lot of middle management and some executives, but mostly middle management, who are still not sure why we have bins. What's lacking? Why don't people feel that they can be their authentic self? And it's because they just don't have the voice. They've not heard the stories. So a lot of what I also feel like we're doing is reinforcing and giving them real experiences so they can understand and appreciate why we need bins. And there's also the intersectionality. We spend a lot of time, because we do have active bins, making sure that we're partnering with the bins, and I can help broker some of that engagement. it's also throwing out new ideas. Just because of our experiences, we may have new ideas that some other team did, or you've done budgeting before or planning before. So you have a great way that you can just throw out ideas and let the team decide if they want to take them forward or not.
Awesome. And these are fantastic executive sponsors. They're underrepresenting the contribution that they make every day. So they're amazing. And when we get new executive sponsors and they ask me, you know, what am I here to do? And we share all this information. But one of the primary things I always tell them is to really help the leadership team kind of up level their thinking. Because most of our bin leaders are not executives. They may be first line employees, they might be a first line supervisor. And so our executive sponsors see the organization from a really different space and different perspective than our bin leaders do. So I think one of the key things that our executive sponsors can do, and it's in that strategy part, is really getting them to think strategically about the things that will really help move the needle and work towards achieving our DEI goals. And so, you know, I mean, if ask your sponsor for that too, right? Say, hey, you know what? We see this every day in the roles we're in. We need your help adding to that by sharing with us what you're seeing at a different level in the organization, if they are at a different level. So I'm going to ask another question, but then I want to open it up to other people to ask questions too. So I'll ask a question, let them answer. And if you want to ask a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, and you can go to reactions and then raise hand, and then we'll get through as many questions from people as we have. I know there's some in the chat. It's just hard to track them because they keep getting missing as other people put comments in. So what's the biggest challenge you face as a Pride executive sponsor, and how do you address it?
I would go first. I think, and I'm not perfect, and I don't know all the answers, but one of the biggest challenge that I've, as I, became an advocate and sponsor and talk more about the community, is the lack of understanding, the lack of familiarity with the language, the way you should think about engaging with the community. That was a challenge, and one of the things that I definitely did, and I know we continue to encourage executive sponsors or even executives to engage with the community, have the conversation, ask the tough questions. One of the things that Annette always said, Martine, ask the question the way it comes. Be respectful, but don't miss the opportunity to learn, because that's the only way. And that's what I promote. And I find, Beth, that many executives sometimes they struggle with how to engage with the community, how to have the right conversation. So that's what I try to do. The challenge that I've seen and faced, how I addressed it, and how do I encourage other executives to manage and engage and overcome that challenge.
Yeah, for me, it's been challenges. I mean, maybe I'm just too level-headed, but it seems like there have been fewer. But I think one of the challenges we've had recently, and just kind of make it true, and we're all virtual here, is we've just had problems kind of getting everyone together and continue the momentum, right? So when we talked about, like, how do we get our attendance up? How do we continue to spread our word and things like that, right? Like, we've done a couple things, and we kind of sat down and strategized around, can we get, a fellow executive within the company, right? That is supportive, or that wants to be more supportive to kind of help drive that type of thing. And then a couple of the other things is we just said, look, we just want to be engaged. And now more so than ever, things like mental health are just so important, right? And we did a session not long ago where we just asked, we asked people how they were doing, and the response was just overwhelming with the rawness and the realness that came from it, right? So I think, like, at the end of the day, sometimes we think like this is a big challenge, right? But people are there, and they're looking to us to kind of help drive this type of leadership and stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge we've been finding, right, is how do you engage in this virtual world? So it's been interesting is we're a site, we're part of a sales center. So we're very comfortable with how to manage when you're in a physical place together. And we do really well with that. And now we're all working from home. So now we're all virtual. So the things that we used to do that were standard, you can't really do as much. It's hard to do even community events right now because you just can't, as a group, we can't meet and be part of that. So we're struggling with how to do that. But one thing I am seeing that is happening is organically, our field sales teams are starting to develop bins also. And so now we're all virtual. So we've just started to engage with our field teams that are creating a virtual bin. So they're always going to be virtual. So now we're going to look at how can we work together and join ideas. So we've just kind of, in essence, doubled our ability to have contributors and be part of that story. So that's something that's new for us. And I'm looking forward to seeing how that can mature.
Awesome. So now let's take some questions from the audience. And maybe for these, maybe just one of you or two of you can address each one, because that way we can get through some more questions versus everybody answering everyone. So how about you, Matt? Would you like to take yourself off mute and ask your question?
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. My question is, how are you leveraging your executive sponsors to help encourage, I would say, membership, and also even more than that, people taking on leadership positions? It looks like you have many bins, and I imagine trying to keep people in leadership roles is difficult. Can you talk a little about how you have done that?
I can go, Matt. How I do it. Definitely, I use my network to encourage other executives to be executive sponsors. I check with him. I share my own experience on how richful the experience is for me. How what I learned from it, and I try to promote the concept of being an executive sponsor as part of a and learning opportunity for executives. And I saw a comment, I don't know who was, but this idea of the figurehead, I think it's important that you have the conversation with the executive sponsor, because actually I think the biggest value that an executive sponsor brings is the engagement with the BIM or with the ERG. And yes, you use the title to get participation, you use the title to get resources, but actually the richness is in the interaction with the executive sponsor, not so much about whether they just show up in a banner.
I've been watching the chat, and I think there are some key themes here on how to get an executive sponsor who maybe says yes and then disappears or doesn't spend a lot of time. I would suggest that you have a reset conversation. Invite the person a one-on-one, say this is a reset conversation with the leadership team and you, and we want to understand what's not working so that we can engage with you in the way that works for you, and put it on the table. Be frank and say, we know you're really busy. Is that a situational busy, like for the next month? Can you re-engage with us before the holidays? Or are we talking about, should we find a new executive sponsor? A very frank conversation, and then say, maybe we've been asking you for the wrong things. Let's reset this. In what right now for your situation, we know you're busy, what couldn't you offer us? And I think you'd do that if you saw an employee. If you're a manager, you'd see if an employee is off the grid a little bit and needs some course correction, you would do that as well. So transparency and open conversation can right a relationship that's gone a little dark on you.
Awesome. So Lisa, you want to take yourself off mute and ask your question?
Sure, thank you very much. My question is this: based on the slides that you put up earlier, there are multiple assets that an executive sponsor needs to bring to the table. Considering that we're all human, and I think as Martin suggested earlier, he doesn't have all of them himself, and so we can't expect our executive sponsors to be able to perform them all. Would it be beneficial to have multiple executive sponsors, or does that wind up muddying the water? That way they can balance their strengths and weaknesses against each other.
So You want to take it?
I mean, I can start and then I'll let you build on it. So I think the answer is there's no problem in having more than one because like I said earlier, like I probably have a couple of the skills that were listed on the slide, but then I don't have the best of the other ones. I think the other thing in my situation and what I've done just as the executive sponsor here is I reached out to my network or to the the surrounding bins that are potentially doing something well, or that I've seen like, wow, that would probably work very well for our bin, right? And I've asked for either their coaching or their understanding, and I always say that well, plagiarism is the best form of flattery, right? So there's nothing wrong with taking those good ideas from other places and applying them to your in our bin. But yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with it at all because we all bring something unique to the table, and there's nothing wrong with two of you doing that.
I also think that depending on the stage of life cycle you're in as an ERG, you may need different things, right? You may have been around a really long time, and like Deb was saying, you may have a leader who has some really good skills in some of those areas. So I also think it's good to look at that list and assess what do you have and what do you need, and then go find somebody who can be an executive sponsor, talk to the one that you have now and say, you know what, we think we have these things covered, but where we really need your support, and it's in that contracting conversation, is on these two things, over the course of the next year. And then next year we can talk about what we need after that.
We can also ask for kind of like hired help, right? So if there's something that the team needs, your executive sponsor might be able to get a special guest or someone to come in to assist, just even if it's a one-time discussion or once a quarter. I think there's always opportunity to bring in more people and help. And what I find is that if you ask, people are more than happy to help. They may have to schedule out a month or something. But usually people, when you ask for help, they're quite honored that you're asking them. So it's just a matter of asking for those experts to come in and help.
I'll chuckle in because our Global Pride bylaw rewrite was behind schedule, shall we say, and Beth was asking for it. And I finally asked, I said, do you guys need some help? And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay. So I then asked my chief of staff and I said, I see you're not involved in this, but is this something of interest and it's up your skill set? And yeah, and so the two, they worked together and the bylaws were submitted to Beth, and maybe still a little late, but it's surprising if you ask, people will come forward. And another aspect of that is ask something that's specific, that's not like, hey, could you do this for the next year? Could you do it for this week? I think it's 2-week deliverable, and people can then, because I acknowledge there are a lot of people that are burnt out, they're sick of Zoom, etc. So make it in small bite-size deliverables, and that is easier.
Well, somebody just put a comment in the chat, and then Martine commented on it as well about people going to the C-suite for their executive sponsors. And at HP, our executive sponsors need to be director level or above. So they don't need to be our top executives, but they need to be somebody in an executive position who has, power, influence, authority, and can get some of the things that our business impact networks need. So sometimes you can get more support at a level that's not the very top level. So Chris, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you so much. And I'm sorry if I missed this, but I'm just wondering, does HP have executives set diversity, equity, and inclusion goals that kind of serve as motivation for executives to want to be a sponsor? Or is it just kind of based on intrinsic motivation and wanting to do it?
Martine, can I put you on the spot for that one?
Of course, we do. We set up goals. Typically, the way that we manage it is the C-level exec has the goals, Chris, and then they cascade it down to their immediate leadership team. And each organization has a very strong partnership with Leslie and Beth and the D&I team. So we make sure that those goals are clear, are communicated, and that there's clear motivation towards that level of engagement. And actually something that you may find interesting as well, Chris, while we were launching the webinar today, our CHRO sent the note to all the managers of those employees that participate in our bins as we are entering into our performance management cycle for the year. to make sure that managers recognize the contributions of the bean. So you see that both from the people managers and the executives with those goals, there's definitely a system that helps us drive that commitment to drive inclusion and belonging at HP.
And if I could kind of add on to that, so I'll give you a specific example. Aaron and I both we've mentioned our sites, right? So for a lot of our bins are site specific. So like I have a place in, my site is Rio Rancho in New Mexico. And so when I think about our bin, it really gives me that visibility. It makes me part of the site council, and we represent that team, as well as I work with my manager so that in my yearly goals, we always have a metric about people, and I always put in, not always, right, but what I put in there are my goals as being part of the bin, so that we can kind of make that a benefit for us all. But that's how I look at it as a metric, right? It's a way to be visible and be a strong force within your site. And it also is part of my personal goals. So that's how I held myself accountable toward it.
Awesome. And there's tons of questions still in the chat that we haven't had a chance to get to. So like Annette said, we're happy to answer questions afterwards. If people are wanting to get together and have a different, another session a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks out and just pull people back together and set up a Zoom meeting and have more conversation, send me a message on the Pathable platform. And if there's enough people, I'm happy to do that too, just to do more discussion around this. So before we close, we wanted to have everybody do a little activity, because they say that if you write something down, it's more likely that it'll happen. Whoops. There we go. So what we want you to do in the last 2 minutes, or we'll just take a minute, but just think about what you learned today and list one action. We don't have a lot of time. So just write one thing down on a sheet of paper next to you, type it on your computer and your notepad, whatever you want to do, that you want to take to leverage your executive sponsor for maximum impact. Because then you will have that as, one of the actions coming out of Summit that you can take when you are back in the office, whether you're doing that virtually or in person. So just take a minute and do that. And if you want to type something in chat, feel free to do that to, as a public commitment of what you're going to do, or to share with others what you're doing to give them ideas. That would be awesome as well. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Annette and just let her, I'll put up our last slide, but you can close however you want to close.
I know everybody's probably anxious to have a break and run on to the next session, which I think it's a lot to take in, so many sessions back to back to back. Remember that in Pathable, you'll be able to watch sessions, and then in the files section of Pathable, we'll post this deck. So key takeaways, finding and choosing the right executive sponsor is critical. One of the key takeaways there is go with a balanced view, try to understand what they want out of being a sponsor, and also make it accessible. So acknowledge that many of our executive sponsors are allies, and they're a little scared that they don't know all the right terminology and maybe how to ask questions. As Martine says, it's hard to engage. So make it as easy as possible by saying, hey, we know you're an ally. You may not know everything, and we don't expect you to. What we're looking for is your leadership and your sponsorship, which you're good at because you're at that level in the company. So be as accessible as you can be when you're approaching someone. Understand then, we've given you some of the roles of the role that executive sponsors play, but also how can you feed them the information that they need in order to excel in the roles where they have the sweet spots. And as Aaron says, most executive sponsors, they don't do all 5. So maybe consider 2 and have that conversation. Maybe it smooths out the role and responsibility. And then what we mean by contract annually is really be deliberate in saying, what are the objectives that we're going to accomplish together as a leadership team and the sponsorship team? What are the key initiatives? Maybe it's hosting a 1-hour strategy session. Maybe it's a commitment that they're going to attend a call once a month. Write that down so that there's clear expectations. And then if you do have to have a reset meeting, you can look at that and say, here's where we started, what's working, what's not working, and so that the group can continue on. And then be open to get the feedback. So if the executive sponsor is going to see something and will help you through it. So executive sponsors, if you are one, thank you very much for all the support you give to your leadership. If you're a leader looking for an executive sponsor, hopefully we've given you some perspectives from those executives so that you have a good match and you understand how critical it can be to help sponsorship for your ERG to accomplish your goals, keep it focused, and get the credibility, visibility, and acknowledgement for all the amazing work that you guys do. So, and I say, guys, I just went through the non-binary and terminology, and I'm still correcting my vocabulary. So all of you, thank you. And I'm role modeling, learning myself. And so really have a great day. And thank you again to the panelists, and big kudos to Beth. Over 130 bins in our organization is phenomenal. So have a great summit. Thank you for attending.
Very valuable.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.